Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening, and to any of our listeners that watch this at a later date. This evening topic for the Rural Support and Wellbeing webinar is about livestock management and animal gatherings. I've just got a couple of housekeeping slides that I'll show you to start before we kick off with our speakers. So I'm Nikki Rattenbury from Heart of the Southwest Trading Standards, and we are hosting some rural support and wellbeing webinars for targeting the farming communities as best we can, and it's being funded by our Future Farm Resilience project. Okay, the next slide, please, Luke. This is just a housekeeping and just an explanation slide. So if anyone at any point would like to unmute themselves, there's a button where you can just press and it will unmute yourself, the microphone button, and then please feel free to interject if you would like to, and join in at any point in the presentations, because the more interaction the better. We also have a chat facility that myself and Luke will monitor as the speakers are talking. So if you would rather not speak but you want to make any comments in the chat, then we can raise that at a time with the speaker. And again, at the end of their talk, if you have anything you want to add, that's absolutely fine. We have put on not sharing screens, just mainly as much as possible because of the internet access. It seems to slow things down when there's a lot of us on the screen at once. Okay, next slide, please, Luke. We want everyone to be as open and chatty as possible with these things, and some of the topics that we cover can be quite sensitive. So if anybody would prefer their names not to be shared in the presentation, or any of the questions that they ask removed, we can edit this recording at the end. So please feel free to contact Luke by email or by telephone on the number on the screen, and we can remove that for you. Okay, next slide. So tonight's speakers is just the three of us. First off will be Helen Eustice, a Trading Standards Officer from Cornwall Trading Standards. Myself, Nikki Rattenbury from Heart of the Southwest Trading Standards, and a lady called Mia Seabrook, and she's from Stop For Life Devon, and she does a free offering a free stop smoking service. We went to a show with her, agricultural show, and we've learnt lots and lots over the last couple of days. So and we were really hoping that she can share some of those things with you later this evening. Okay, so if Helen, you are ready to start and you're happy to share your screen, that would be amazing.
Yeah, no problem. Can everybody see that?
We can, or I can.
You can.
Yeah,
see that.
Brilliant. I'm Helen Eustice, as Nikki kindly said, and I work for Cornwall Council in their Quality Standards and Animal Health and Welfare team. So it's a little bit about me, just so you've got a background. I'm a farmer's daughter. I went to Seabrook, where I did my degree in agriculture, and I started with Cornwall Council back in 1999. And during my time with them, I've done a certificate of competency in animal health and welfare, agriculture and food standards. So as animal health inspectors, we obviously have a wide remit, responding to complaints, targeted visits, farms, small holdings, but we do market duty and animal gatherings in amongst all the other things that you'll see there. And in total, we enforce over 200 pieces of legislation. And why do we carry out these visits? To ensure the health and welfare of all livestock and poultry within the county, including those travelling through it, to provide confidence to the public with regards to the food chain, and to provide advice and assistance to businesses. And we also have to fulfil any licensing functions for animal health and disease contingency purposes. And that obviously came into play during foot and mouth. We work alongside the Animal Health and Plant Agency, or DEFRA, police, the other emergency services, the RSPCA and rescue charities. the powers that we have under or during our role as animal health inspectors come under, most of them under the Animal Health Act. We're obviously authorised, we've got warrants, and we have to have reason to suspect, enter any premises. It's got to be with a reasonable hour. We can take any people, equipment, we can seize records, take copies of records, but there's a couple of things there. We can mark animals, detain animals, and issue notices, and they come into play when we may be at an animal gathering, a show, or a sale. And those animal gatherings are legislated by the by the Welfare of Animals at Markets Order 1990, and that applies to animals while they are exposed for sale in a market or while they are awaiting removal after being exposed for sale there. It also applies to animals that are being kept temporarily in a market without being exposed for sale there, pending completion of their journey. And the legislation says that no person shall permit an unfit animal to be exposed for sale in a market. And what does unfit mean? That includes infirm, diseased, ill, injured, and fatigued. No person shall permit an animal to be exposed for sale in a market if it's likely to give birth while it is there. It also goes on to say that no person shall cause or permit any injury or unnecessary suffering to an animal in a market, and it shall be the duty of any person in charge of an animal in a market to ensure that that animal is not or is not likely to be caused injury or unnecessary suffering by reason of the animal being exposed to the weather, inadequate ventilation being available, the animal being hit, or any other cause. Obviously, there are certain restrictions, and some of those apply to the sale of calves. So bovine under 12 weeks of age is the definition of a calf for the purposes of the legislation, and that's not allowed in a market if less than 7 days old or has an unhealed navel and has not been brought into the market in the last 28 days. Obviously, there are requirements for the market operators to ensure the market is well maintained, it has adequate facilities, and isolation pens are provided. And as I said previously, inspectors at a market can move an animal if they consider it unfit, or they can request that it is moved. They can mark it and detain it. And any person that contravenes any requirements of the order will commit an offence. So moving on, Nikki just asked me to sorry, you all right? Nikki just asked me to show some photos of things that we might come across and see at market, and just try and really sort of explain what we would be concerned about at market, just to raise awareness and obviously to try and prevent anybody breaching the requirements. So here we've got a photo of a cow with a calf at foot, and she's obviously really thin, and I know that dairy cows are thin, but she's obviously a beef breed, and that is very thin, what we would consider thin, and that raises alarm bells. So while she may be standing and looking alert, as inspectors in a market, we would look at that and think, goodness, she is very thin. I wonder what the rest of the stock on the farm that she's come from look like. So that is a flag to us and something that would, cause us to question. Here we've got a couple of photos of some sheep. And again, we're not vets, we're not veterinary qualified. There used to be a time when there were vets on duty in markets, but they aren't anymore. So what we do as inspectors is look at the stock, and anything that we are unsure about, we would in the first instance speak to the farmer that has brought that animal to the market, if they're present, to the auctioneers, and just say to them, look, I'm not sure about this. Now, I don't know what your thoughts are, and obviously people keeping livestock probably have, greater knowledge and opinion than maybe us as inspectors. But the photo on the left could potentially be ORF, which is obviously contagious, and an animal with ORF should not be in a market. And the photo of the other sheep on the right has obviously had some sort of infection, and it's sort of scabbing, crusting around the eye. So again, those sort of things cause us as inspectors to question, what's wrong with those animals. We've got two here that again may not have anything specifically wrong, anything that's highly contagious, but they just don't look a great representation of good, healthy livestock. And as you'll see, they're obviously both there in the market setting. The sheep on the left has got an ingrowing horn, and you will see, I know it's not the best photo, but the horn has clearly penetrated the skin and going in towards the skull of that sheep. So that is clearly not fit to be in the market. And the photo on the right is obviously, again, I apologise, it's not the best photo, but of the hoof of a sheep that's clearly not as it should be. And again, dirty cattle during the winter months, this is something that we do see an awful lot, and we appreciate that bedding is expensive, just as feed is expensive, but there is the requirement in the legislation that the animals should have a dry lying area. And when you see cattle coming into a market that are clearly very, very dirty, then questions are raised about how they've been kept back home on the farm. The other piece of legislation alongside the welfare of animals at markets order is the welfare of animals in transport order. So while we're at markets, we're obviously looking at the animals there and whether they're compliant and whether the actual environment is compliant. But we would also look at the vehicles. Now, hopefully, we would never see anything like this in this country. There is obviously a legal responsibility to ensure that animals are transported in a way that won't cause any injury or unnecessary suffering, and that applies to all live vertebrate animals transported for economic reasons. And we would check vehicles while we're on duty at a market, and we obviously undertake multi-agency inspections, which you may have seen at roadsides. And as I say, we would look at different livestock vehicles that bring animals into the markets to make sure that they are, clean and obviously not dangerous to the animals. The animals are transported in a suitable manner. We go on, as I say, just a list there of what are unfit animals. So you've got very young animals. I said about the calves, deer and velvet. Puppies and kittens less than 8 weeks old, newborn male, heavily pregnant females. Difficult possibly to spot those in market, but we do have reports from abattoirs that cattle mostly have been transported within the last 10% of the gestation, which again is clearly in breach of the requirements. So trying to be mindful that, if an animal has the potential of being in calf, that she's not sent to slaughter within that last 10% of pregnancy. Obviously, anything that's sick or injured is clearly unfit. And obviously, animals are allowed to move if they are undergoing veterinary treatment. And then I've just listed the different things that we would look for, which I'm sure you're all aware of with regards to each of the different species of cattle. We're looking to make sure that they're correctly tagged, that the sort of size of the animal would roughly match their given dates of birth on the passports, and we would also check things that they haven't been moved within the standstill period. Sheep, we look at the sheep licenses, we look at their identification, and again 6 day standstill. Pigs, very similar. And that is it, really. That's sort of my conclusion of a brief run through of what we as trading standards officers would look for while we're on duty at a gathering or market. Don't know if anybody's got any questions.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Helen. I really appreciate you taking your time to share with us that presentation. I am just having a look to see somebody's written in the chat. Oh, I think that was just Gentleman Colin saying thank you, Helen. That's very useful. Has anyone got any questions or anything they would like to ask Helen? Oh, I think Becky has one.
Oh, hi, Helen. Yeah, I'm also I probably know you're a trading standards officer with the Heart of the Southwest. Obviously, work with Nikki and go around the markets. I just wondered, sort of how receptive your markets are to advice and sort of working together and sort of turning away unfit animals. Obviously, we have two quite large markets in our area, and yeah, that they're doing pretty well at sort of responsive to us. I just sort of wondered how you get on with yeah, so obviously we know a lot of our job is relationship building and that sort of thing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think standards have obviously improved over the years, and I think people are much more mindful now. The auctioneers are much more mindful, and I think producers are much more mindful. And as you say, we try and build good working relationships. And I would always, encourage conversations in the first instance with the producer if they're there. Obviously, sometimes they send their livestock to market, with the haulier. But I would openly say to the auctioneers, and I feel that we are, things are much better than what they are. They appreciate where we're coming from. And at the end of the day, nobody wants to have trading standards coming and doing an unexpected visit because they've sent some animals which weren't fit to be in the market into the market. So I feel that, yeah, we have got a good working relationship, and things are generally much better than what they used to be. We've only got 2 livestock markets now in Cornwall. And as I say, we obviously visit both on a regular basis. And yeah, I would say that our working relationships have improved over the years, because at the end of the day, we just want, quality to be at the market, for the animals that are there, as I say, to be compliant with the legislation and be a good reflection on British agriculture.
Yeah, I think we've found the same. They've definitely improved, and we don't really go to markets now to look at the market operators. We go more to see what's being brought in.
Yeah.
It's a good window. And I just wondered if you have sort of, because we're working on getting support. Obviously, in the good old days, we used to have private vets come in.
Yeah.
But that's obviously everyone's resource short. So we are actually working with AFA now, and they are looking at getting vets back into market with us, which is really, I just wondered if from Cornwall, if you have a veterinary presence or if you're pretty much the same as us, you go in and phone if you need help.
Absolutely. And we would always say, if I spot something like this sheep, I showed you the pictures of, if we see things that we're not sure about, and it is difficult, as I say, we're not veterinary qualified, we would always say, look, we've got a couple of options here. I'm not sure, so we can get a vet and get their opinion on it, or you can take it home. And 9 times out of 10, we will come to some sort of agreement, and it will go home, or it might go straight to sort. We put a restriction on the mileage that the animals can travel onward from the market. But yeah, at present, we're exactly the same as you. We don't have a veterinary present in the market, like you say, we used to, but we have been told that AFA are planning to send vets back into the market. So we'll wait and see. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have that second opinion, and 9 times out of 10, you don't need a vet, but there are obviously situations arise that it would be beneficial for the producer, for ourselves, to have that qualified opinion.
Yeah, no, I think they're definitely keen to. I know the vets themselves are keen to come, and I think working with them today, that I think there's been some progress. So perhaps we can, yeah, we could catch up with you about that sometime, because it would be, because obviously we work in Somerset quite closely with Wiltshire and North Somerset, so it would be nice to, yeah, sort of work with you guys as well. Yeah, but no, thanks, Helen, that's great.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any questions? I think you might be okay, Helen. I was just going to ask how the relationship is with sort of the farmers in general, really, because I know, majority of people that I approach when, if we do have an issue, then, as long as while they're still there, I think I always feel like they prefer it if you have the conversation with them at that point, rather than, it's always that dreaded phone call that when you have to follow it up afterwards. So I definitely find, as much as possible, to try and, even if we have to use the tannoy to call somebody over or whatever, we do try. I think Becky does the same, and when she goes, is you try and sort of approach the farmer to see their animals at that point with them. And I know when we used to have the vets with us, that was always a really good, it was great to have the farmer, the vet, you could sort it all out right there and then, 9 times out of 10 it wasn't as bad as maybe we first thought, or we could all come to a practical conclusion of how we move forward and what was best for the animal, really. And I just wondered, do you have a sort of, are the farmers pretty receptive to the similar sort of approach in Cornwall?
Yeah, I would say that they are. 9 times out of 10, the minute you stop and sort of study a pen or an individual animal in a pen more closely, you will then become aware of somebody approaching or looking over your shoulder, asking what's wrong with that one. And it is often the producer, and you have that conversation, like you say, and it is much easier to sort it out there and then. I have to say, on a couple of recent occasions, walking around our markets during the winter, we did, as I say, I showed you some pictures of some dirty cattle, some thin cattle. Those particular producers, the two that I have in mind, were not there on that occasion, and that was a follow-up, unannounced follow-up visit to the farms, and in sort of both cases, as say, totally unrelated, but it did then end up with us helping them. Different reasons, things had gone awry. One had fallen hugely behind with applying for passports, so we were able to bring in some external help through a farming charity and help him to rectify, as I say, the issues. And likewise with the other one, he'd fallen on real hard times financially, couldn't afford feeding and feed. So we were then able to bring in, as I say, help from a farming charity and help him. So I appreciate that, people sort of view us as the animal police, maybe looking at what's going on, quick to criticise, but I would like to say that we are there to help. And when we see things in a market that we don't consider to be acceptable, or maybe flags up issues, sets alarm bells ringing, we do follow up visits. It's not necessarily that we are then going to take them to task and start writing sort of formal letters or prosecuting them. We can bring in other organisations and charities to help them if that's beyond our remit, if it's things that we can't actually do as trading standards. So I would say that we have got a good working relationship with the majority of the producers that we see at our markets, definitely.
Oh, that's really good. Thank you ever so much, Helen. I appreciate your time, and you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the webinar if you would like to. But equally, if you have something on that you need to get away for, then that's absolutely fine as well.
Right. Thank you.
Thank
Nikki.
you. And I think Mia, are you there somewhere? I think I can see you in the list. Yeah, you made it back from Oakhampton show.
Hello.
Brilliant.
I did. I had a very, very wet day at Oakhampton.
Oh.
But it was nice. It's very wet.
Lovely. Well, I think you kindly gave across your slides, I think, and Luke should be able to share them for you. And then, yeah, whenever you feel ready to start, that would be amazing.
Yeah, no worries. Apologies, my kitten's decided that my laptop's the most interesting thing. So if she appears, apologies about that. Yeah, Luke, if you put the slides on the screen, I can run through them. My name is Mia. I'm from the Stop Smoking service for Devon County Council. So we can provide support for anybody smoking in Devon, as long as they are not living in Plymouth or Torbay, as they've got their own services. But we can always refer them out if they are in those areas. We run a completely free service as well, so it's super easy to get involved. I've kept the slides to a minimum, so any questions, do just shout. Feel free to interrupt me, all of that sort of stuff. If you pop over to the next screen, Luke. Thank you. Perfect, there you go. So yeah, we're Stop For Life. It's a 12-week pathway that we offer. So when people decide that they want to quit smoking with us, they can give us a call and refer into the service. I'll run you through how to do that. And then they'd work with a coach for 12 weeks. In that 12-week period, we'll then get them the free nicotine replacement products. So that's patches, gums, vapes, lozenges, breath sprays, mints. There's literally everything that you can buy, but it's all completely free. And it's also sent directly to people's houses. So obviously, I know in rural communities, they're not going to be taking time out, especially in busy seasons, to be going to and from pharmacies every week. It's not easy, it's not accessible, especially not in Devon. So we send it all directly to people just to make it as easy as we can for them to stay in the service and to help them on their quit journey. We can also offer vapes to people who are wanting to try them. We've got specially trained vape. I don't know what you would call them. They're kind of the ins and outs of everything that they know. They're the specialists on vaping. And we can talk people through. I know that lots of people are a bit unsure about vaping, but we've got all the facts and figures. And if people want to try them, we can sort that out for them. And our coaches are based all across Devon. So if people did want face-to-face, we find that especially with the more rural or older community, actually getting out and having someone to speak to every week gives them that routine and helps them quit a bit better. So we can do that. We've got them based north, south, east, west and central. And they'll all travel to wherever people are. So if it's coming out to them, we can sort that out. And then for people who are looking to quit but aren't necessarily quite ready to be going on a 12-week pathway, we have our app Best You. If anyone wants the link, I can send that to them. I know I told you a little bit, Nikki, about Best You yesterday. It's a platform that's got all the top tips and tricks to be able to quit smoking, and it's all peer support. So it's everyone that's going through that journey or has been through it, and the coaches that we work with put in their top tips and tricks, and you can track where you're up to with your quitting or cutting down. If you pop to the next slide, Luke. Perfect. So yeah, there you go. For anyone who wants the information, obviously, if you do, you can grab my contact details. I can send you this if and when. But the main way to refer is through our website. So that's stopforlifedevon.org. If you go on there, there's a little button that will say get started. And it's super easy for anyone who is interested in doing it. It's a name, a postcode, a date of birth and a contact number. That's it. That's all we need. And we take everything else from there. Likewise, you can give us a call on that number. You'll go through to our programme coordinator, Emily. She'll talk you through the service, talk you through everything that we need to find out and get you set up with your appointment. Or you can email us. We've got our NHS email for anyone wanting to send confidential information. So that's people's names, addresses, any medications that they're on, medical conditions. Or you can email our service email, which you'd find on our website as well. Likewise, if you want to refer anybody in, you can just get in touch with me. I can sort all of this sort of stuff out for you. If you pop to the next slide, Luke. Okay. And those are the contact details. So it depends what you're looking for. I'm the engagement lead, so I'm out and about in all of our communities in Devon. So if you want some training, if you want an event, if you want to know a little bit more, if you know a group of people who might be really interested in getting involved with the service, I can come out and do that. If you're looking for some more kind of higher up knowledge, that would be our service manager. So Emily is able to help with everything that's to do with us being commissioned. We're also able to offer training. So we can come into workforces and we can set up training to be able to teach people how to refer into our service, as we found lots of people don't like asking for help. So making sure that the people that are already comfortable with know how to get in contact with us is a lot better. We found this in places like food banks. If they're already in that community, they don't want to then have to go to a different person and ask for help. So we've taught them how to come to us. just to make it a little bit easier. So we can do that sort of stuff, but we can also work with workforces to help them quit together. So we've done it with a care home as a pilot. 9 of them joined with one of our coaches. She went there every week, and I think 7 of them quit at 12 weeks. So we have a really good success rate. We've got 75% of people that are joining the service with us are quitting, and that's since November. So I think it's, you know, a few thousand people now have quit across Devon with us so far, and hopefully once we get our word out a little bit better, and people know us more, then that should go up. But obviously the main thing you need to remember is my name, my contact details, and if you need anything, do just give us a call and I can discuss that with you. But yeah, I'll keep it nice and short because I imagine everyone's nice and busy on their evening. But obviously, if anyone's got any questions, please do pop me a message, email me, phone me, or give me a shout now.
Oh, thank you, Mia. That's brilliant. Has anyone got any questions or anything they would like to ask? I haven't seen anything in the chat so far, so you might be lucky, Mia.
I can imagine it is one of those things that you might have some family that are smoking, grandparents, cousins. I spoke to a few people who said that their sons were young farmers and smoking at the moment. They took the cards and they're going to home to have those conversations. So obviously, do just have a think, get in contact if you'd like to.
I think Luke's put his hand up. I think he might have a query or a question.
Yeah, I think we spoke a bit about this before yesterday. I've got a family member that literally I've tried for ages to try and get them to stop smoking. Then as soon as I shared one video with them, it was the video that seemed to do the trick. But I'd be curious to know how do you find most people come into the service, or how do you find most people would give up smoking? Is there I know the program obviously has its benefits, but is there any one simple thing that people might be able to do if a program's something that's quite difficult for people to access?
Excuse my dog. So there are no boundaries. There are a few different ways that people tell us that they've tried. Some people say it worked amazingly. The Alan Carr book, not Alan Carr as in Chatty Man, different guy. I may or may not have thought they meant Chatty Man for a long time. But there's a man called Alan Carr who wrote a book about stopping smoking, and people say absolutely amazing. He tells you to smoke the whole way through reading the book, like to continue really smoking throughout it. And people said that halfway through they feel sick about the idea of smoking, and it's got a really high success rate. And for people who don't like the idea of potentially being on the pathway with us, or they don't like the idea of patches, gums, whatever it might be, there are also medications you can get from your GP practices. So there's 2 on the market. The main one is called Zyban. And the second one is cytosine, which will be available in October, we're hoping. It came on the market in January, but it's not quite out and available yet. But Zyban is a course of medication that you take. You start taking it 3 times a day, and then you taper it down. But it's got really high success rate. GPs are able to prescribe it. Some GPs are a little bit funny about it, but generally if they don't want to give it to you right on the spot, they'll tell you that you need to work with someone like us to get the behavioural support, because what we do essentially is behavioural change. That's the main gist of what we're able to do. It's just that we do it with smoking. But yeah, if someone's not interested in pathways like ours, things like the book, the NHS smoking app gives you live updates on what your body is recovering. So it gives you at 20 minutes, you're breathing better. At 5 years, you've reduced your risk of heart attack, all of that sort of stuff. So you can keep it as long. My old flatmate used it, absolutely loved it. Or yeah, there are things like Zyban. And I can see Rebecca asked if there is a similar service for Somerset. There is. I can't entirely remember the name of it, but if you ping it into me in an email, I will get that sorted for you and I'll send it over. I know that my service manager, Emily, works with them because they're doing some smoke-free Southwest work. But if you send me over an email, I can definitely get that sorted for you and send it over.
I might do that, Mia. I might send you an email and just see if you can do the same, because obviously as part of this project we're covering Cornwall, Devon, Somerset and Dorset. So actually if there is contact sort of for the wider Southwest basically, then I will if we can get a contact for each of those areas, that would be really good, and then we can kind of promote all areas, not just Devon then, so that would be great.
Yeah, the other ones as well that you'd need to speak to are Live West is the one for Plymouth. So anyone that's just the other side of Tavistock and down would be Live West. And then Torbay and that kind of Paignton Torbay, that area is Your Health Torbay. But they're both brilliant services. We work closely with them for the people who are on the borderlines. But they're both brilliant to get in contact with as well.
That's amazing. Thank you. I also was just, I know we talked about it when we were at the show, and I was just sort of the cost implication that you shared on your banner. And I just wondered if you would just mention that, because I think that when you kind of talk about that in the context of how much things cost, it actually is quite frightening.
Yeah, of course. So with smoking, I think that people don't tend to notice that they're spending that money, especially for people who have smoked all their lives. It's something that they budget the same way you budget your fuel and your food. But on average, if you're smoking about 20 cigarettes a day, that's £365 a month at least, depending on what you're smoking. The actual figure is more like £400 to £420 a month. Add that up, that's just shy of £5,000 a year, which is an insane amount of money. It's a cost of living crisis. Everything is expensive these days. And to be able to save £5,000 and improve your health for what is maybe 12 weeks of being really uncomfortable with having to be on a pathway. And obviously nicotine is an addictive substance, so having to go through that transition. But the money implication alone is a really big seller that we've found for people, because it is such a large quantity of money. People just don't realize that they're spending. It's like a pay rise. And obviously that money is quite literally being burnt. But yeah, it's a big one. It's a very good one to start this conversation with loved ones, to say, are you realizing that this is happening? I've had conversations with my loved ones since working in this service to say, did you know that this is what's happening? But yeah, it's about £400 a month at the moment, which is a lot of money.
Thank you. I just, I think when you said it in that context yesterday, I was a bit like, golly, that is, I think if people did actually, really pay attention to that and sort of realize when you go to the end of the year how much you could save and stuff. And like you say, with cost of living and us trying to save, money on other things, I think, it really brings it home. The only other very small question I had, which was just obviously I'm a mum of teenage children, and obviously vaping and, is quite an issue in terms of kind of it being like the new smoking, and it being quite a cool thing now to kind of try these vapes, because they make them all different flavors, candy floss and God knows what else, and obviously through work we do, we have the same kind of issues with kind of ones that are not legal and stuff like that. And I just wondered if you sort of faced with any issues with regards to, because in a way I guess you're having to kind of promote the vaping in order at the beginning to kind of try and stop the smoking. And I just wondered if you're mixed with any issues with that, really.
Yeah, there are a lot of issues around vaping. I think obviously the more we learn and the longer it goes on, the better we'll be equipped to deal with it. When it comes to young people, we're actually building a young people's pathway currently. So we're working with young people to try and understand what they need to know about vaping, a bit about education, about harm reduction, about using vaping as a tool as opposed to it becoming a habit. We promote vaping because it is 95% safer than cigarettes. But that's caveated with if you use it 6 to 12 months maximum, and that's to cut down smoking. That's not to replace one habit with another, because that's not behavioural change and that's not nicotine reduction, which means that you're not actually going to stop. The harmful substances do stop coming into your body to a degree. Obviously, the cigarette smoke, the tar, the carbon monoxide, but we don't know what will happen with vaping. So there are issues that are going to be around that, and that's something that we are preparing to deal with later down the line. Vaping does have quite a weird reputation in Devon. Some people love it, some people hate it. As you said, obviously the younger generation, they're all over the bright pink bubblegum flavoured clouds. They love it, they can't get enough of it. So we are trying to work with them at the moment. And that pathway hopefully will be set up by October maybe. We've got focus groups over the summer with young people while they're all on their breaks to see how we can develop it. And then it'll be going into schools and starting to educate people about what it actually is. The same way that when we were younger, we had the smoking lady come in. We'll be going in and trying to do some work around vaping and awareness, education, and hopefully trying to get people to reduce the amount they're picking it up. And I know that you touched on the idea as well that obviously they're not all regulated. I know we had this conversation yesterday, but some vapes and the ones where you see the popcorn lung cases and things like that, they're not regulated vapes. They've got substances that we can't control. These are things that are bought on like Amazon, bought on TikTok. They're not verified. There's no standard, obviously as trading standards officers, you guys get that there is a certain level that we have to adhere to make sure these products are safe for people to consume. These ones don't have them. We don't know what chemicals are being put into them. We don't know where they're being made, how they're being made, and they're an absolute nightmare. So trying to teach people as well that if you are going to vape and you are going to do that and you're going to pick up that habit, not only is it the nicotine, but also you need to make sure you're buying them reputably. You're buying them from places that are safe, that they have the proper legislation behind them, and hopefully we'll get that. And another issue with vapes that we found is also they are an ecological nightmare. Environmentally, they are costing millions and millions of pounds. They're ruining landfills because millions of them get thrown away every day and they've got to go somewhere, but they aren't recyclable at the moment because of the different materials that go in them. You can't break a vape down into the different categories you would need to, which means they are just being put into landfill, which is obviously, given how many are being thrown away every day, in 2 or 3 years, is going to have really significant impacts, not only financially, but on actual, environmental factors. It's an incredible amount of single-use plastic. And that's something that I think we're really going to see being pushed as a deterrent to use them in the next few years.
Oh, thanks, Mia. I think that's given us a much better example and an explanation about it all. So it is like you say, if you try and stop one issue, and sometimes there's another issue that raises its head, doesn't it? But at least if we're all aware of it and we're all trying to do the right thing, I think that is the best way forward. I don't think anyone else has any questions. There's no more hands up and no more comments in the chat. So Mia, thank you ever so much. I know you've had a really busy day, last couple of days actually at agricultural shows and stuff. It was great to meet you yesterday. And if you would like to stay for obviously the rest of the webinar, you're welcome, but please feel free to sign off as well, because I expect your day is pretty done, I expect. So
I've actually got to go back and check on my horses because one of them is struggling with rain. So I will leave you. But thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to meet some of you yesterday, and hopefully I will speak to the rest of you soon.
That's really kind. Thanks ever so much, Mia. Bye-bye.
Bye. Nice to meet you.
Right. We would have had the police join us this evening. A lovely Cornwall police officer was going to speak to complement and just sort of move on from what we've been talking about earlier at animal gatherings, and we were going to talk about livestock management. But sadly, with everything that's been going on, the police are on alert and are unable to join us, I'm afraid, with all the riots and other things that are happening, so which is very sad. So I was going to just do a presentation just to complement what they were going to talk about. So I thought that I just to fill 10 minutes, I would just still share that with you. And if it sparks any conversations or anything that anyone wants to ask or to discuss, then please feel free to step in. I've just got to share my screen, as normally I rely solely on other people to do this kind of thing. So I'm hoping I can do that. Would somebody just like to tell me that they can see that?
Yeah, I can see that, Nikki.
Is that? I'm not really sure whether that's right. Can you see all the extra bits around the outside?
We've got an orange screen with a white circle, blue cow inside the white circle.
But you can't see all of the additional bits around the outside, so hopefully that's good. So the police were going to talk about kind of their role. with regards to livestock management, sort of mainly bordering, animals that are escaping, or that that cause that they get like things kind of stuck on the highway, or those kind of issues really. And I was just going to raise kind of just a reminder really for everyone that obviously we have two quite bits of legislation for the farmers and farming community for the responsibility of those animals that you're kind of looking after. One is obviously our Animal Welfare Act, and that there's basically two main sections in that we look at when we're on farm, or that I think is really worth highlighting. One of them is the section 4, which is our unnecessary suffering, and that really is about a person making sure that they do not commit an offence and that they cause an animal to suffer. That's basically the main aspect of it. But there's also, it's really that the person commits an offence if it's their act or failure to act that caused the animal to suffer. And if they knew or reasonably should have known that the act that they are causing, or act that they are doing, or failure to act on that animal would in effect or would cause them unnecessary suffering, or be likely to do so. And that's any protected animal that's deemed a protected animal under the Animal Welfare Act, and that the suffering that they have caused the animal was deemed unnecessary. In addition to that, a person commits an offence if he is responsible for that animal, and it's the act or failure to act of another person causes that animal to suffer. So he permits that to happen or fail to take such steps. So if the person that they are supervising or otherwise does that act to cause the animal suffering, I just thought it was worth raising that, because sometimes you get people working on your farm, or that you leave the animals under somebody else's care or responsibility. And I just think sometimes as the person that actually owns those animals and is deemed the responsible person, just because you were not there, or that you thought that you'd given the responsibility to somebody else, you are still deemed responsible. So, and you have obviously an element of at the end of the day, the buck still stops with you and caring for those animals. The other section I just wanted to touch on was section 9, which is the duty of a person responsible for those animals to ensure the welfare. And again, it's just really just highlighting the importance and making sure that a person takes reasonable steps to ensure that the animals that they're looking after meet the extent of the good practice. For example, the animal's needs should be met. It's a suitable need for environment, need for a suitable diet, need to exhibit normal behaviour patterns, and any need is to be housed apart or with other animals. Also to protect from pain, suffering, injury and disease. Now, any normal good farmer obviously will know about this, but I just thought it was worth just mentioning that, and it would have complemented quite well alongside what the police were going to talk about. The other bit of legislation which is made under the Animal Welfare Act is the Welfare of Farmed Animal Regs. And obviously we work and we look at these when we're doing our farm visits. This is another bit of legislation that helps us to look at what's compliant and not compliant on farm, and it also sort of deems what's the duties on a person responsible for those farmed animals. There's lots of sections and lots of schedules within that, and it was all deemed that's goes with the animals. So sometimes there's certain extra conditions for pigs or poultry, and it all comes down to the fact that this legislation has codes of practice written with it, and it's just really a reminder that the person that's responsible for those animals must have access and must know about these codes of practice, so that you then are aware of all the different things that a particular animal may need. So pigs may need certain conditions slightly different to what poultry would need, and so on. And I just wanted really just to raise those kind of things. I then wanted to just say about some of the issues that we find on farm and some of the main things that would overlap with what the police would be following up for us. And obviously, you know, when you're turning your sheep or your cattle or whatever livestock you have out into a farm, sometimes you would be using fields that are maybe just temporary, or, you know, not directly by your farm, and you're borrowing, you know, land grazing from additional farmers, that kind of thing. And I think it's just important to remember that even if you're using those fields, using those areas of ground, even if it's just temporary, you need to ensure that the livestock, your animals, wherever you put them, are contained and that they're safe in the environment that you're putting them in. And I know these are just a couple of pictures, so sometimes even if you were just temporarily using it, it's not your responsibility to maybe maintain the fencing or clear up some of the scrap metal or the hazards that are in the fields, but it is to make sure that those animals, when yours are in there, that they don't have access to those. So you would need to put up additional fencing, make sure that they can't get out onto the highway, that kind of thing. Just need to move on to the next slide. So yeah, because this is what we end up being faced with, and what the police would then be contacted about is obviously cattle getting out onto the road. And that would then come down to the Highways Act. If any horses, cattle, sheep, goats or swine are at any time found straying or lying on the side of the highway, their keeper is guilty of an offence. But this does not apply in relation to parts of the highway, passing over the common, that kind of thing. So obviously onto the moors, things like that, when you're entering that ground, you will find them on the highway, and you will find them lying, you know, by the side of the ground. So that isn't, you know, that's not something that it's open common grounds that everyone's able to use that highway. And obviously this is just a standard. Cows always, and animals may think the grass is greener, but and they will look to escape. So if the conditions that they're being kept in, it's very often they might well try and get to where they think the grass is greener. And obviously if we do you know, the other option and the other thing that can happen is that animals will stray onto other people's grounds. So if the fencing's not kept in a correct manner and keeping your animals enclosed in your own grounds, there's a chance that they could escape onto a neighbouring field, and that could cause problems. So if that happens, I just wanted to make it aware that the landowner does have obviously an element, you know, they have rights if those animals do escape, and the rights of a landowner. These situations can be dealt with quite simply, and hopefully a simple phone call will make the owner aware that the animals have strayed, and they will come and reconfine them. But obviously if that's if that doesn't happen, you know, you do want to try and keep yourself safe, because obviously if it was a bull or something like that, then you don't want to be in their path. You don't know what those animals' temperaments are like, so you need to keep yourself safe. You should call the police to let them know and log a call that the animals have, obviously you found some animals in your fields, on your land. You should try and find the livestock owner as much as you possibly can. But the Animals Act does allow the landowner to detain those animals to prevent them from, you know, trampling further fields or from causing any further damage. And in certain conditions, they obviously they can sell them, but that's obviously as a last resort. If the livestock is detained, remember you are taking responsibility of them, and so you must make sure that you treat the animals with reasonable care and provide them ample food and water. So if you do confine them in a certain part of your land, then obviously you do need to make sure where you're waiting to to try and contact the owner and find the owner, that they do need to be provided with food and water. And you must also give notice to either the owner or to an officer in charge of the local police station within 48 hours of detaining the livestock. And when the livestock owner offers to collect the animals, then they should be returned to them. However, if the livestock has caused damage to your land or to your boundary fence, you should log and estimate value of the damage. And in some scenarios, damage can be made, it may be better dealt with by a civil claim. this can be very complex, and it's always good to seek legal advice with regards to that. And so that was going to go alongside what the police officer was going to talk about, and that was just going to interject with it. But I just thought it was worth, while we had 10 minutes, to just go back over that really, and just make people aware of those kind of one part of livestock management really, and the responsibilities around it. It was just a bit of a whistle top. I don't know if anyone has any additional questions or any comments of any things that they've dealt with that might be worth sharing. Oh, it's Robin. Yeah, please, if you've got a query or a question.
Yeah, just a question for you. On the 2007 Act, the sort of list of code of practices, you couldn't send those around, could you? Just, or, you know, the link to them, or put, I can't actually see the chat on my screen. I think it'd just be really interested just to take a look through those. I wasn't aware of those.
Yeah, sure. What I can do is I can try and I can share with you a link for with the welfare of farmed animal regs, there is codes of practice that all farmers should have access to for the individual breeds of animals that they keep, basically. And obviously, for, like you say, for poultry and pigs, for example, they normally have more and additional conditions to some, maybe livestock or sheep, like cattle or sheep. So and they all should be able to be accessed quite happily on the .gov website, but I will work out and share a link with you. That's no problem.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
That's okay.
Yeah, because they're really good codes, aren't they, Nikki? And I don't think they've been updated for some time, but every person, even if they're not the owner, if they're employing somebody just looking on them on a couple of days a week or something, they've got to be affiliated, and we very often use those codes, don't we, in sort of interviews and everything, to make sure that are people affiliated with them, and they're really worth, on your first visit, just giving them out to make sure, and that they're good for officers as well, because they're really insightful to know all the little bits that perhaps the legislation doesn't go into, and best practices and everything.
That's it. And I just don't
really
think that we necessarily not everybody is aware of that. It's a bit like where you work under a general license for the movement of the animals. It's a bit similar in when we're working on farm and things like that, and you don't necessarily always think of sharing that with the employee or somebody temporarily looking after your animals. So I will definitely make sure that we get those codes of practice, the link out to via this. Thanks, Becky.
I think we've used that Animals Act legislation as well. It's a really useful piece. I know district councils use it, don't they, for straying animals on sort of council land and everything. And I think after 14 days, if no one claims them, it's good and bad. They sort of can become yours, as long as like you say, you've reported them to police. They become yours, and you can then dispose of them. So I think they use them quite a lot for potentially sort of horses straying on land, that sort of thing. It's a really old but good piece of legislation to have. So that's really interesting.
We've had the reason the police were sort of saying about it was they've sort of had we've had quite a few, or we've had some work, been doing some work alongside them, sort of on the borders of Cornwall, where somebody just not taking responsibility for their livestock and the location that they are, could end up resulting in quite a serious accident on the main roads. And like you say, it's just umpteen visits and umpteen. We've been contacting them and speaking to them, and actually now the police have had to get involved because of that issue, really. And so it was just how it can overlap, and sort of how we can support each other, really, the police and us, to try and resolve the situation.
Yeah, definitely, because they enforce the Road Traffic Act, don't they? And quite often you've got these animals grazing in fields that are next to roads or something. So between us, that's with the person whose land they're on, they can use that act, and then police can use Road Traffic Act. And it's a good way of resolving some of these situations, isn't it, that we might struggle with at other times.
Absolutely. But yeah, that was it really. So I'm sorry it's a little bit shorter this evening than some of our others, and I'm hoping that the police will be able to join us at one of our next ones instead, as things are a bit busy for them at the moment. So but yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Helen, as I think you're still on the call, for joining us. I know it's additional to everyday work, so it is, you know, quite a lot having to put a presentation together, but it was really, really useful. I am very grateful to you doing that.
Oh, that's all right, Nikki. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's kind of my pleasure.
No problem. Well, if nobody has any more questions, I think, Luke, did you want to, we've done an FFR update, but I don't know if there's anything, you know, each time. So I don't know if there's anything new that you wanted to add before we finish this evening.
Not particular. There has been a few announcements this week, I think most people are aware of, but just really the fact that there's less than 5 months of the programme available. So yeah, free farm business support available through the Future Farming Resilience Programme. We don't know what will be happening in the new calendar year with budgets and funding, but yeah, make the most of the support while it's still there. That's all I've got to say on the programme. Robin, I can see you've got your hand up. Is it another question, or is it just your hand's been left up?
Sorry, yes, no, legacy hand. I shall take it down.
Sorry, didn't want to single you out there, Robin.
Well, that's great then. If nobody else has anything else to say, then we will we'll finish on time so everyone can get a bit of their evening. Thanks again for Angie, Robin, for joining us each week or each month when we do these. It really is really grateful, and you know, I'm hoping that you're getting something out of it. And thank you, Becky. So we will end the evening now. Thank you.